We're going to be doing polynomial division with these 5 examples right here. And hopefully that will cement the understanding of this concept a little bit more. So let's start with number 1. Okay, so we're just dividing by x on these because I just kind of want to start a little bit slower. Eventually we will be dividing by linear factors that aren't just x, but for now we're just going to be showing how this concept works by dividing by x. So first thing I want to do is I want to kind of solve this the old school way, okay? And the old school way of doing this would be to, factor out an x. So I'm going to take an x off the top here, and you end up with 3x to the third plus x. So I factored this top part right here to get this part right there, okay? And then we're going to divide this by x. And hopefully you can see that these x's right here, this x and this x are going to cancel, and you're left with 3x to the third plus x as your final answer. But to show you the concept of polynomial division without this factoring, I'm going to show you a different way of doing this. Okay, and we should end up with the same answer by the time we're done with it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set this up like it's a long division problem. So I'm going to write 3x to the fourth plus x squared, and then I'm going to divide it using long division by x. Okay, and it's going to follow the exact same rules as long division, where you have to think, what do you have to multiply this x by to get 3x to the fourth? Okay, how can I divide up this 3x to the fourth? How many times can I divide this up if I divide it by x? Okay, or if I divided 3x to the fourth by x, what would I get? Okay, so you could just think of it another way too, is just what do you need to multiply this x by to get 3x to the fourth? Well, that would be 3x to the third. Okay, so if I multiplied this 3x to the third by this x, I would get 3x to the fourth. And if you remember how long division works, you would just subtract these off here. So go cancel, cancel. And the only thing you're left with now is x squared. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down here and just write x squared. And you just repeat the same algorithm, the same process over again. So you have to think, what do you multiply this x by to get x squared? And the answer for that would be x. So I'm going to add an x up here. And then we're doing that exact same thing. Let me move this really quick. All right, so x times, so we're going to take this x right here and multiply it by this x over here to get x squared. And then again, we're going to subtract this off. So cancel, cancel, and you're left with 0. So your final answer would be this part right here, 3x to the third plus x. Well, if you notice, that is the exact same thing that we got right here. Okay, these match. So that kind of shows you that doing this long division algorithm on polynomials works as well. And again, this was a lot of concepts, a lot of steps to break down. So hopefully by doing all of these examples, it'll make more sense as we go. Okay, so that's number 1. The long division part of it is the bottom part. The factoring out technique is at the top. Okay, so let's keep going with this for number 2. Okay, well, the old school way of doing it, again, if you factored out an x from the top, you would have 4x squared minus 6x plus 1. And we're dividing this by x. Okay, the x's are going to cancel, and you're left with your answer of 4x squared minus 6x plus 1. Again, they're not always going to be this easy. I'm just starting with this just so you understand the concept behind it. Once we divide by something other than x, it's going to be a lot harder to do this. So that's why I'm showing this method essentially. So we're going to do 4x to the third minus 6x squared plus x, and we're dividing this by x. Okay. The way this works is you have to think, what can you multiply this x by to get 4x to the third? Okay, well, you would multiply it by 4x squared. Okay, so you would multiply that down here and you would end up with 4x cubed, and then we're going to subtract. Okay, this will always cancel. If you pick the right number up here, these two numbers should cancel then. And you're left with negative 6x squared plus x. Okay, now you have to think, what do you multiply this x by here to get negative 6x? So we're going to do minus 6x here, and you're going to end up with negative 6x squared. Subtract that off. Cancel, cancel, and you're left with x here. what can you multiply this x by to get this x down here? Well, 1. So then you end up with an x here. These two cancel, and you're left with 0. So this ends up being the final answer right here. And if you notice, it matches what we have right here. Okay? And that should always happen. If you do the dividing out technique or the polynomial division, it should be the same thing no matter how you do it. Okay. All right, let's try the next one. All right, this next one I'm only going to do it the long division way because we went over the dividing out technique already. We don't really need to worry about that one so much. This video is primarily just going to be focusing on that long division of polynomials. All right, we're dividing all this by x. And this is going to be x to the third. So you get x to the third here. That's going to cancel. Cancel, cancel. Oops, that should be x to the fourth. I'm sorry, x to the fourth. Either way, it cancels. Okay, and then you're left with this 5x to the third. So we're going to multiply this by 5x squared. So 5x squared times x is going to be that 5x to the third here. That's also going to cancel. Cancel, cancel. And then you're left with this negative 3x squared minus 5 here. So we're going to put a 3x up here. 3x times x is negative 3x squared. I'm sorry, negative 3x times x is negative 3x squared. We're going to subtract this off here. Cancel, cancel. And then you're left with negative 5. Now, this is where we run into some problems here. You can't multiply this x by, you know, some value to actually get this negative 5 here. Okay, so when this happens, this is called a remainder. Okay, and what you do, because there's no x's in it, what you do with this remainder is you just put it up top here as negative 5, and you just divide it by whatever that value is, this x right here. Okay, and this ends up being your final answer right here. Okay, now that's a weird concept. Why would I multiply it by, or why would I subtract the 5 over x? Well, to show you this, what I'm going to do is multiply my answer. So that huge answer that I just got right there, that x to the third plus 5x squared minus 3x minus 5 over x, I'm going to multiply this by x. Okay, so I'm doing the reverse of what we just did. I'm going to multiply this by x. Now, if I do this, I should end up with this numerator, essentially, because instead of dividing by x, right here, I'm dividing by x because x is on the bottom, I'm multiplying it by x, so it should reverse what we have, and we end up with just that numerator up at the top. Okay, that's how you can kind of tell you did it right. All right, so here we go. Multiply this by x here, and you get x to the fourth. Multiply this by x, you end up with 5x to the third. Multiply this one over here by x, you get negative 3x squared, and then multiply the last one by x, and you get negative 5 over x times x. Well, the x's cancel, so you're just left with 5. Well, if you notice, what I'm highlighting right here, which is not the answer, it's just me checking the answer, but if you notice, what I just highlighted here matches the numerator up here. Okay, so that does show that this answer that we got over here does check out to be the answer. Okay, so long story short, the rule of the moral of the story here is if you have a remainder, just divide it by, you know, whatever we were dividing by. In this case, it's x. Okay. All right, this next one's also going to have a remainder, so this will be good practice. So we're going to have x to the fifth plus 3x squared minus 2x plus 3, and we're dividing this by x. All right, so this is going to be x to the fourth. So that's x to the fifth. It cancels. Cancel, cancel. Okay, so now we're left with 3x squared minus 2x plus 3. So you need to multiply this by 3x up here, and you end up with 3x squared here. This is going to cancel, and it should always cancel, otherwise, again, you pick the wrong number up at the top. And then you have negative 2x plus 3 here. You multiply the x by negative 2 here, so then you're going to have negative 2x down here. Subtract that off. Okay, you could do this minus to be a plus plus. Either way, it's going to cancel, so you don't really need to worry about it. And then we have a remainder of 3 here. Okay, so when you have a remainder of 3, it would just be 3 or plus 3 over x. And this ends up being your final answer right here. Okay. And if you want, you can distribute by multiplying that by x and seeing if you get the numerator, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. You can do that on your own. All right, in this last one, we're not dividing by x anymore. Now we're dividing by 3x. Okay, so the rules are a little bit different on this one, but not really all that much. So we're going to do 3x squared minus 6x plus 9, and we're going to divide this by 3x. Now we are going to have a remainder in this, and one way to tell is that this thing doesn't have an x in it, and you're dividing by x, so there's going to be a remainder. Okay, if you notice the ones that did not have a remainder, like number 2, it didn't have a remainder, it's because this x right here, it would divide evenly by x. This x squared is going to divide evenly by this x. But the other numbers, like for example this -5, that's not going to divide evenly by x. Okay, so that's why I can tell whether there's going to be a remainder or not, just by looking at that value. All right, so let's work this out here. So what times 3x is 3x squared? Well, x is. So then you get a 3x squared on the bottom here, subtract this off, and you end up cancel. Okay, so then you end up with -6x plus 9. Okay. What times 3x is -6x? Well, that's -2. So then you get a -6 down here. Subtract this off. Cancel, and you're left with the remainder of 9. All right, well 9 does not go into, you can't multiply this 3x by something to evenly go into the 9, so that's the remainder, so we're just going to do plus 9 over 3x. Now this actually does simplify because it's 9 over 3 there, so your final answer would be x minus 2, and then this and this are going to cancel. 9 over 3 is just 3, so you're going to have plus 3 over x. And this would be your final answer right here. All right, so that's 5 pretty basic polynomial division example problems. The next video I make is going to be a little bit more advanced than this one, where we're not just dividing by x with the other ones, we're going to be dividing by other linear factors. But if you have any questions about anything in this video, let me know.